course, I could be being paranoid, but when you get closed government behind closed doors, you tend to get a bit paranoid about this whole sort of thing. Now, I wrote a wee song last night about this. I was quite tired and emotional by the time I got to write the song. So, forgive me if I screw up a few words, but that's live music, that's what it's all about. Adelaide, Adelaide, Susan Love called to Conservative and stayed. She's never heard all the music that you made in Adelaide, Adelaide. You take away the heart, build concrete canyons on our beaches and parks. Colonel Light's vision is looking pretty dark. It's looking dimmer, it's getting grimmer. So if Princess died.
That it indicates that there is a real need to make sure that live music venues, particularly those venues that don't rely on other sources of income such as pokies, are able to thrive. And look, there are competing interests here. I think it's very clear that if you've got a live music venue that isn't that's been going for years, and people want to put up a new residence right next to it, that's crazy. There've got to be planning laws in place. I've had constituents who contacted me about existing residences next to pubs that have made a lot of noise. Sometimes those things can get messy. Maybe we need to streamline the procedures there. But as far as places like the Gov, the Austral, the Grace Emily and the Exeter, it's crazy to be proposing new developments right next to them.
Oh, I play guitar and I go to local gigs and stuff around Adelaide. Yeah, I'd try and get my band to play, and this is the only place where you could start playing from. And yeah, it's nearly a dead-end track if you try and get a band here with it, where you can't get noticed anywhere if you ban this sort of stuff. And they should also know that by when they're buying the house, like that goes with buying the house. What were they like when they were kids and stuff? Like, you know, what is youth and stuff supposed to do? Like, hang out in the streets all night?
The way some of these councils are behaving at the moment, they want to turn Adelaide into the world's biggest retirement village. And we've got some of the greatest pubs in Australia here. The Governor Hindmarsh, the Grace Emily, the Austral, and the list goes on. I think you'd agree there's some of Australia and the world's greatest pubs, and we need to keep these pubs, and they need to have more of a say in what's going to be built around them. We're not against development for the sake of it, we just want people to start listening. South Australia is known as the festival state. A lot of young people are leaving this state. Live music will keep a lot of them here. Live music employs a lot of people who work in pubs, clubs, get their jobs courtesy of musicians. And I think it's great, and your support represents that live music and the pub industry is important to this state. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my life. Yeah. You know, it's something I've been doing for like 26, 27 years professionally here, you know. This is a fantastic thing. Yeah, I mean, like, this first occupancy law should have been in since day one. I mean, like, it was a place here called the Old Lion. They've got just bulldozed in because there was some arsehole up the top in a high-rise that got built out the back of it. You know, like, they wanted police to go out because they didn't like the live music. I mean, it's got to be an ongoing thing.
Somebody would like me to sing, so blush. 3, 4. And here's to you, Mr. Harbison. Music loves you more than you will know. Oh, oh, oh. God bless you, please, Mr. Harbison.
the moment, it will be fixed. This government will not let this city, not only the CBD but the wider Adelaide metropolitan area, be reduced to residential and retail. Let's celebrate live music and our enjoyment of it today and in the future. Thank you.
If you've got a useless piece of land and you want to rezone it just to make a few grand, the council will give you a hand. They'll make a deal with no appeal. If you go to sleep one night in your little bungalow, wake up next morning beside the rubbish depot.
Category 1 development is a development that is allowed within the plan. There's nothing to prevent it being passed, and it should be passed if it's Category 1 development. That is specified within the plan. And that plan is approved by the council and subsequently approved by the state government. There is plenty of opportunity for the public to comment during the preparation of the plan, and ours was 18 months ago. Category 1 has no public comment, and I was absolutely plain about that.
It is very important for members of the gallery to realise that this is not a council meeting. This is a DAC meeting, and the matters decided have to, under state government legislation, have to be decided according to the plan. Council has
Currently, I'm involved in two situations. Almost, I feel like I'm under siege. The approval was granted, and what the developer was proposing is to soundproof to the level of 55 decibel outside noise. 50 is basically a flushing toilet. People walking footsteps is something like 40 decibels. A car driving past is 70 decibels. So it's
the external noise level that is proposed by way of this condition is a level of 70.
Then there always needs to be a subjective component to it because each situation has a range of factors which vary the situation slightly. So to set a limit and say that every hotel or every resident should be exposed to that level or every hotel should meet that level is not the way that we go about it, and is not the correct way to do it either. General noise from other sources, all this drops down and you're left with a lot of energy here from the music. And so the more that stands out above the background, the more people will become annoyed by that situation. So during the day, that's the sort of thing that you should be looking for. It's around about the mid-60s. Right. Which is what you'd expect on any sort of reasonably busy street. But at night, people are complaining about music levels of the order of 50 to 55, because what's happening during the day is that all your background levels are much higher. The issue of annoyance and how people are affected is related very much to the background activity.
We are here to judge this application purely based on the compliance of the Adelaide City Development Plan. It is very difficult for this panel to actually impose conditions which are outside the rules of the development plan.
I now put the motion. Those in favour?
Boo.
Those against? Carried.
Rise on first occupancy.
Yes. I think I should have to adjourn the meeting.
The retirement village city.
You know, all those things that AHA is asking for, that's the problem. And if they're talking about compromise, the developer's not going to be talking to me now. And it's saying I'm already in court with another one, another Penrith in Bent Street as well.
Can you try and look into see label this week?
Well, I met a landlord, I've spoken to landlord, she stood there, said that if the council doesn't listen, the South Australian government is listening. Empty promises, again.
The AHA
has actually developed a 7-point plan, which we believe will go a long way to solving the problem. But this is really to start creating a dialogue, things like buyer beware policies, which are consumer protection measures, reviewing zoning laws. We want sensible planning. We want a review of noise levels. There's a whole range of things that need to be looked at in greater depth, and we need to have a cohesive plan so that we can actually protect the future of this city and the future of this state. Hotels under the current legislation are not protected when it comes to noise complaints, and in our view the laws are inadequate, including the noise level laws as well. And we also believe that the ground rules need to be a lot clearer for the residents moving in, that they also understand that where they're moving into is an entertainment precinct. We're not anti-development. We think it's a great idea that people are moving into the city, and of course that brings more people to the venues as well. These people that are moving into the city are also potential customers.
Well, we have a surplus of office space all over town, and if you talk to Business SA and so on, they'll tell you that that is the case. I think, in fact, Adelaide's got one of the highest rates of unfilled office space in Australia as far as capital cities are concerned.
One of the most important things of that strategic plan was increasing the residential population. But it needs the things to go with it. Some rich, some poor, some old, some young, and so on, so that we really get a more vibrant community here.
We want development. A city needs development for growth, but at the same time you have to retain the soul of the city.
And I've got a general idea of what's going on, and it seems to have reached some sort of crisis point at the moment. I mean, there are people in our block that are traders here, haven't even been told, have found out via the media that in a year's time they're not going to be here, that their building is going to be used for residential purposes. And in one situation it's like 10 yards away from a beer garden that's been used for live music for as many years as I can remember. Developer is a bad word, because if someone truly wanted to develop the city, they'd be looking at the culture of the city and development in terms of all sorts of things, arts included. What we're talking about here is people that are trying to make easy money quickly. The damages it does goes through all sorts of people, including other businesses, and certainly other fields like entertainment, arts, all sorts of things, and general lifestyle for everyone in the city.
Well, the suburbs venues are literally all gone. You know, it's down to 2 or 3. Mainly, you would have to say that it's the residents, and you know, in a way, I sympathise with them, but there has to be a balance. I mean, I could throw the old Lion Hotel at North Adelaide, which that room had a remarkable history, and it's gone. It's literally not there. This state has gone from probably the busiest touring state to almost the quietest, and venues are really the main reason. You know, promoters don't have venues, so they're not prepared to put the money up to bring the artists in. We're now seeing what venues we have left in the city, really, or close city, and they're now under threat. Look at the Go. That's a hotel that has developed a remarkable gig, really. It has probably one of the best rooms in Australia, and you know, the industry really is horrified that a venue could be in strife, and if they are building units, and expensive units, next to the hotel, well, you know, you can add 2 and 2 together and it won't be long before there's going to be trouble with the residents. Whoever came up with those decisions to allow it to be built really hasn't done anybody any favours.
Sure, hindsight's a wonderful thing. There's always something to be learned from what we've done before. But going further than the Development Act expects of us in terms of seeking the views of other people who are going to be involved in living in that community, for first occupancy rights to be considered. In lots of ways, the future is more in the hands of of the legal changes that can occur rather than the things that council can do differently. The right time for this debate is when you're writing policy for an area, not when you're doing an assessment of a particular development, because you very much then are required to act within the constraints of the legislation, yes. I certainly would expect that both live entertainment and development would thrive in our city. That would be our goal. Certainly the council recognises that the Governor Hindmarsh Hotel is one of the major live entertainment venues in the City of Adelaide, that the Gov is one of the key businesses that we would want to be supporting.
Well, we're in a situation where a developer has just got permission through our DAC law, which has meets in secret, has no need to notify you, and to which you have got no right of appeal, to do a housing block at the rear of the hotel. Developer says to potential buyers, look, there's a problem here, but don't worry, we can fix it. Because only one person needs to complain, and the licensing court will act on the point of that one decision, bring people around a quiet day and say, look, what lovely surroundings, what a great little trendy pub to drink at, but no one's going to tell them that, hey, this place has got a 3 o'clock in the morning licence. Once this DAC committee meets, which is every council has got a branch of it, their decision is final. There's no right of appeal to it. There's no need to even reveal that decision to the public. In the case of the Grace Emily, if the council reject the application, the lawyers have looked at the Act and said, oh, look, we can just ignore the council. We'll go to the Supreme Court and have this overruled. We'll sue them for costs. We'll sue them for hindering our development.
The situation is that we won all the council's votes bar one at the Development Assessment Committee hearing. The developer then took it the next step and it takes it to a High Court, which is he's taking the Adelaide Council's decision to the High Court. They've never had a complaint. We've ran the business how we've wanted to run it. It's not a loud music venue, but the decibel readings that you're permitted are at such a level that you can't talk too loudly without a complaint. So once we get a 106 slapped on us, then that'll be the ball game.
The first people in the world to be faced with this dilemma, which is basically a conflict between land uses. It's not original, it's happened all over the world in every inner city area where there's been a change in the way we use the CBDs. Everywhere in the world there's been an increasing residential infill into CBD areas, and always when that happens there's going to be conflict. There is an issue that can't always be dealt with just by having sound attenuation, thicker glass, better doors, because it's a street issue as well. People don't just materialise in a live music venue, they have to get there, they come by car, they leave, they go with their friends, they laugh, they joke. So they will say we can put in sound attenuation, they can say we will put double glazing, they can say we will put special measures into the pub, we will sponsor that. But the reality is they're not going to be there in 5 years' time when the noise complaints, the EPA requirements are in force, and they may not be the ones who are actually complaining. Once you've sold it on, those new residents will have an expectation when they buy in that they can live there quietly. The corner of North Terrace and West Terrace, that's the Newmarket Hotel, and they actually had amazing foresight, because when the last plan review was being enacted, they put a lot of time and energy into lobbying to point out that it was an unsuitable place for residential development, and the land uses around that pub were changed in order to produce a buffer zone. But in fact, if that had been enacted across the city, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now. The way of solving the problem has been used before. There is a precedent, and clearly it's the way to go.
Brian Tonkin was the licensee here in the 70s, and he was one of the original people to set up live music at the Bridgewater Inn in the 70s. We actually withdrew. We made the decision to withdraw live amplified music from the hotel. The last band, which was a local band, played here on the 30th of June due to the pressure we were receiving from local residents, particularly their complaints to liquor licensing.
received a registered mail from the council solicitors summoning me to a meeting. The date hasn't been set at liquor licensing for a 106, which means a noise complaint. We've actually complied, but because the EPA has so much discretion, so much grey area, we don't know where we stand because we feel as though we were told, make the adjustment. We made the adjustment. We're doing it. But we then get summons to... I would have to fight that because there's no business here without live bands. We were doing live bands Thursday, Friday and Saturday, and I was doing them on Sundays, but we've cut back to Friday and Saturday. Recently just sent a letter off to the person who was complaining about, and it was the crowd that just moved from here and walked down to the Crown and Anchor, down to Rundle Street now.
Residential development already completed across the road, and there's one happening on this side now as well. There aren't any problems currently, although there certainly is fear for the future that perhaps when there are residents so close that there might be. We need to look carefully at better insulating the rooms, perhaps a balcony or a veranda out that side, that kind of thing. It's certainly going to mean expense for us. Developers aren't sort of really interested in compromise. I suppose they have a goal to meet, and I don't really think that the hotels come into the equation. You know, if there is no compromise, there is no future. A hotel like this couldn't become a pokie venue, it wouldn't become a pokie venue. Without venues like this, there's an element of the city that really couldn't be replaced by anything else.
An emerging problem. It's one that's going to get bigger because all of local government is committed to urban consolidation, which means we're going to double up on the number of houses on sites. We're going to try and bring more people either back into the city or into the suburbs close to the city. So it's something that is beginning to show, and it's going to get worse. Adelaide City Council had adopted a policy which meant, and does mean, I believe this is still the case, that when a new occupier took over any of the current places of entertainment, that new rules would apply as far as noise levels were concerned, including after 1:30 in the morning there could be no live music other than, and the example was given, a 3-piece jazz combo. And the recent decision by Adelaide City Council regarding the Austral Hotel, if a development complies with the Development Act, and that one did, the council really has no choice. If they make the decision to oppose it, then they have to be prepared to pay out a lot of money for lawyers' fees and court fees because almost inevitably the proponent is going to take them to court if the council has knocked back a complying use in a complying area. I expect that within the next month or two we will see some draft amendments to the Planning Act and probably find us in Parliament dealing with them end of September. One of the things that will seriously have to be looked at is making those laws retrospective back to the Austral Hotel's decision. If they have the rallies, if they have the petitions, if they have the letter writing all the way up to election date, yes, they can make it an issue. As it stands, live music's going to lose out. That's as it stands. But I don't think it has to be that way. The Queensland legislation says that prior occupancy has to be a consideration if there is any dispute.
It's not a new thing that there's been a lot of noise, a lot of entertainment and buzzy music. It's not just an issue of how you build the buildings, it's an issue of coexistence, of prior occupancy, if you like. I mean, I think that we always expect in particular parts of Adelaide, in the metropolitan part of Adelaide, that some kind of late night venues have been there for many, many years. And, you know, it's always been known to have a lot of loud music. As a potential government, a Labor Party would want to see the viability of live music. It's like if I moved into the middle of the city, I would not expect to have a quiet environment. If I wanted a really quiet environment, I'd move into the hills somewhere.
I think South Australia has got a chance to show the rest of Australia how it can be done.
That state government, whose responsibility it is, should set reasonable norms. But it should be set at a level that is reasonable to achieve.
Our staff have had a look at the submissions that the Australian Hotel Association have made on this issue, and in fact there is a remarkable similarity in many of the aims and ambitions.
It's a very big issue, and it's one that the politicians and the planners have to sit down and look at and make decisions accordingly. There has to be a live music scene. There has to be places where people and kids want to go.
Adelaide's had a tradition, especially in the band scene, from the 60s and 70s. Most of the great bands in Australian music came from Adelaide, from the Zoot, the Twilights, the Masters Apprentices. That's like 3 of the 4 top bands in the 60s.
It is the soul of our society to have a music of its own. And it takes generations to develop that music, and we have to have public exposure for these young musicians so they can develop their music and people can relate to it.
Our Liquor Licensing Act, one person can make the complaint effectively and could close the joint down.